Okay, I'd like to call the March 25th, 2024 Peachtree City Planning Commission meeting to order. If all those citizens of the United States, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Robin, do we have any additions or deletions for this evening?
No, sir.
Okay. Any announcements and or reports?
We do not have any items for the first first meeting in April. And so if you would, but we do have a public hearing for the second meeting in April. So if you would like to consider canceling that first meeting in April, that would be ideal.
Yes, let's go ahead and do that. We can go ahead and cancel.
You want to go ahead and
Do we need to make a motion?
it's not actually a motion item that needs to be
Everybody
approved.
good
but-
with canceling the April
I am.
1st? Yeah, okay.
Good. Thank you.
So be it.
That's all that we have.
Great, okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and do the approval of the minutes from the March 11th meeting. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to take a look at those. Any comments, questions, additions, deletions to those? Okay.
No.
If none, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes from the March 11th, 2024 meeting as submitted.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from March 11, 2024 as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, minutes approved as submitted. We have no public hearings for this evening, correct?
Yes, sir.
Any old agenda items?
No, sir.
Okay, so we're gonna head right into our new agenda items. First one is the conceptual plat, Peachtree Court Townhomes, 135 Peachtree Court. Turn it over to staff.
Great. I'll give you a brief overview. One of the things I wanted to bring to your attention was in the packet, an eagle eye. See, it does take many eyes. Mr. Leota brought this to my attention this morning. There has been an error on the zoning map since this map was created in 2020, and I wanted to show you that that it is corrected, but also to show you from the original zoning to verify that the correction is appropriate. So what is shown on the left is what was submitted in the packet, and I want to bring your attention to this little, I call it the snaggletooth, and it shouldn't be that. What happened, I think, is we drew that around what we thought was the property of the dance studio, and it was just in the wrong place. And so we've moved that over top of the dance studio, which is appropriate. And just to confirm that that's appropriate, on the left is the map or the conceptual master plan that was submitted with the rezoning. And you can see this area here circled out. There's the dance school right there, and it is outlined in this red color, which is that GC color. And so you can see the correction where it was just over here in one of the wooded lots for some reason, as opposed to being on top of, and you can sort of see through the aerial, sort of that, how the property is already used as the dance school, and that's where the zoning should align with that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
That's good.
The request is part of a plat, so it's a little bit different than site plan review, but we still look at it from the two perspectives, both the zoning conditions and the development ordinance. And so the zoning conditions that apply to this property are highlighted in your memo and summarized here on this slide. So just to orient everybody at home, the street just to the north, that's Peachtree Court, and you can even see that some of the development of the Towson Village subdivision, which is all through here, has already begun in this aerial. This street now actually does continue into this neighborhood. And so they are proposing 37 townhome-like attached homes in this kind of little cluster here, served by these internal streets. And this blue area is the stormwater facility, or stormwater maintenance facility. That's what that stands for right there. And so the first condition we look at was the zoning condition listed that of the entire area, the entire Governor's Square LUC development, a maximum of 75% could be single-family residential only uses. And so when you combine this 5.5 plus acres plus the back acreage for Towson Place single-family subdivision, you're at 73% of the total development area. So they are, I didn't want to put this, but essentially there's not going to be any more single-family or residential-only development in this planned development. They were given a maximum density of 12 dwelling units per acre, and they are proposing a 6.7 dwelling units, so they meet that condition. There was a requirement for a 50-foot right-of-way to connect or to at least stub out to what the southern property line. So they are showing that here. I think there might be some questions later on, so I'll just give just a quick summary here. Other conditions, they were required to put sidewalks on Peachtree Court, as you can see there. Parking was a minimum of 1 space per dwelling unit. They're showing 2 within a garage plus an additional 39 outside. There was a condition to plant street trees every 30 feet. They're showing this in conceptually. Of course, when we do a development inspection, we'll get out there with the actual tape measure. There was a maximum building setback from Peachtree Court of 12 feet. And you can see this dash line right there. They are set up to that. A minimum of a 10-foot building separation, that's a fire code, and they are meeting that. And I wanted to bring to attention, although it doesn't particularly pertain to the conceptual plat, I always like to give developers a heads up that an HOA is required for this property, and so they need to form that HOA and have those deed restrictions reviewed and submitted to the city for pre-review before before we can issue any COs for these properties. When we look at the development ordinance, we look at multi-use path. Now we have an ordinance that says the Planning Commission shall require multi-use paths from commercial and residential. And in the zoning for this development, the nearest path is in this general area, and it sort of connects in and up in Longboat into sort of the internal street network. And then there was one on the very north side of this development, but that was all that was required by zoning. But that doesn't mean that you all don't have the ability to require additional if you think it's appropriate. And so staff mentioned that in other areas of the city, we have allowed the developer to essentially widen the sidewalk. They can even do it within the right-of-way, just so long as it meets the path width requirements and is maintained by the HOA. So if that's something that you all think is appropriate, this might be a good location for it. Otherwise, they have some internal pathways they're showing here that are likely to be private and used by the homeowners. Our development ordinance requires a minimum of 3 acres per 100 dwelling units of open space, which with 37 units equals about 1.1 acres. When you measure this area, this open space area, and do not include the stormwater facility, we have about 1.5 acres, so we're meeting that requirement. And then we always like to, we have an ordinance that requires a minimum of 2 trees per dwelling unit, per lot in the city. And when a townhome does not include an enclosed area that is for that townhome's private use, when the shared area is managed by the HOA, we do allow them to plant those trees in that common area. The idea is we want them to be close to the homes, even if it's not necessarily on their lot, if that makes sense. And so staff is of the opinion that the proposed conceptual site plan does meet the zoning and development regulations and recommends approval. And the applicant is here tonight and able to further provide detail of what their vision is and answer questions. And it looks like, did we forget to set up, here, let's use mine in the meantime.
Do you have it now? That we can show it to them. Hey, Jason Walls with Highland Lane Planning. Just want to say we agree with everything Robin just said. Robin, I was trying to write down the conditions, and I think we're going to agree to all of them, but it was sidewalk at the front was required. We're going to widen that to a multi-use path. There's an easement or a public right-of-way required north-south on this left-hand road. We'll resolve that during the plat stage. And was there a third condition? I think that was it. Everything else we were meeting, all of the units per acre and all that stuff. Anyways, we agree with everything she just said, and the conditions applied to the property, and we're here to kind of answer your questions and comments as you guys look through the plan.
Thank you, Jason. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions, and then we'll do some comments. Commissioner Reeves, any questions?
No questions.
Let me go ahead and send it down to Commissioner Leota. I know you had a couple questions.
All right, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a series of questions for Mr. Smith. Maybe he can help us with the plan. And most of the questions that I have, it is Smith, right? Oh, Smalls.
Jason Walls.
Walls.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I misheard.
That's okay.
Mr. Walls. Most of the questions that I have relate to information that I feel should be on these type of concept plans to give the commissioners as much information as we can to make an informed decision. And I'm particularly talking about dimensioning. There's essentially no dimensions on the plan for things like the roadway width, separation between the buildings, the building sizes, the length of the driveways from curb line to garage. Those things matter to us, so we'd like to have you address some of those for us.
Sure. So this is just the first of many steps on getting the subdivision platted. The very next, so we're out there surveying now, so we'll have survey done in a couple weeks, and then we come back with a preliminary plat. The preliminary plat is going to include everything you said, dimensions, real world boundary survey.
And I think, but Mr. Leota's point
No.
is that they don't actually get to see any of that.
Okay.
You know, staff does.
Sure.
But, you know, if some questions come from their review, that information might be helpful in the
Okay.
future.
So as far as I know, as we laid this out, everything's to city ordinances. So a public road in, I think, Peachtree City's 22 feet edge of pavement, 24 feet back of curb, depending on the road types. We're going to meet everything in the ordinance. We're going to put that in there. We're going to dimension the sidewalk from 5 feet to 10 feet or whatever we agreed to change it to, and show all this stuff at that time. We can get you something in hindsight, I guess, but everything that we've laid out here is, in my opinion, meeting the code.
Okay.
What
As,
is,
as drawn, the roads are all 24
I
feet
do
wide.
understand that, but all I'm asking for, this is concept, and we understand that things can change going to the next step. But some of that stuff is important for us to review so that we understand what we're either recommending approval on or not. So I'll get right into it. Like, for example, the 50-foot right-of-way that's required on this plan.
So,
That should be shown on the plan. It should be shown where the outline of that falls, because I think if you center it on that roadway on the left, it's gonna be overlapping those driveways by at least 50%. So when a car parks in the driveway, half of it's gonna be in the right-of-way. Something there has to be
So-
revised so that doesn't happen.
understood. So the intent of this development is to be a private roads built to public road standards. So we, as drawn, did not intend when we submitted this for there to be any public roads in this project. So we would put an easement around it. But in this case, I think we're talking about the far left road only might require a public right-of-way, or it might require us to prove that it meets the public right-of-way standards, and then it would be dedicated at some point in the future depending on gate placement and stuff like that. But the intent was for it to be a private development.
And for clarification, I did speak with the developer, and I don't think gates are proposed anymore because of,
Are we gonna make all the roads public? Okay. We're still intending to do private roads built to public road standards. And if we're required to show an easement or a public right of way on that left road, I think that's our intent.
Well, I think the ordinance requires you to.
Sure.
It was a specific condition in establishment of this zone that be shown.
Yeah, I mean, and we show the stub out for it, we're just not showing whether it's an easement or a public right of way yet.
Okay, so those are my comments relative to the
Sure.
50-foot issue.
Dimensioning.
And I think you answered the other question. So for all intents and purposes, all the roads are going to be privately owned, maintained by the HOA,
Yes, sir.
built
And-
to city standards?
Correct.
Okay. One of your notes, I think it's note 8 under the general notes, indicates that there's 37 lots. Would you explain that to me? Is it each building envelope itself is a lot, or are there going to be lot lines around each unit?
Each unit is 25 feet wide, the physical unit. So a middle unit will be a 25-foot wide lot extending either to the center of the easement or to the edge of the right of way. And then the end units typically have an extra 5 feet added to them just for a little green space outside the units.
Okay.
So yes, when we get to, my apologies, because I thought we'd pick all this up on the preliminary plat stage. That's the way I thought it read in the ordinance, but all that'll be dimensioned and shown on the preliminary plat.
Okay.
Again, once the boundary survey is done, so we don't have the boundary survey completed yet.
Understood.
Mhm.
And that's reasonable.
So, yes, sir. So there'll be a significant amount of green space that the HOA continues to own. So it's not 100% of the land is not gonna be sold in lots. It's gonna be 37 lots sold with the remnant would be the green space that the HOA maintains, the pond, stuff like that.
As an open space
Yes, sir.
for the HOA.
And they'll mow, they'll maintain the lawn, they'll maintain the yards,
Okay.
everything.
So, not to beat the dead horse, but
Mhm.
that's important information, and would have been nice to have seen that on the plat, so we could understand that during our review, but
Yes, sir.
you're doing a good job explaining everything, I appreciate that. The site's pretty heavily wooded. Have you looked at it with respect to any specimen trees that might be on the lot?
Correct. I think it's heavily pines.
Just to interject, that 5.5 acres here was cleared back in the 80s when this was originally developed. So there was nothing on there when it was originally
Okay,
developed. So there's really no specimen trees on it at all.
okay. all
It's
right.
mostly scrub pines too, so it's a lot of dense, closely planted pine trees. So we'll do our part to cut down on the pollen.
Okay. One last dimensional question. What is generally the distance from the back of curb to the face of the garages? The length of the driveway?
Yeah, as it's drawn, I think it's 25, 26 feet, because the intent was to have a car park there. As we
Right.
get in, we've already had this discussion, as we get into laying it out with the easements or the right-of-way, we're gonna compress the green spaces between the buildings and give it more of a, I don't wanna say an urban effect, but more of a walled in, and
Okay,
it's gonna look beautiful, and if the vision book shows some of our ideas.
all right.
So our intent is to, I understand what you're getting at. Our intent is to, there are 2 parking spaces in those garages. Our intent is to have a car length outside the garage before you get to the sidewalk.
Okay,
Whether that's inside or outside the right of way, I'm not 100% sure. But our intent is to give 2 extra spaces in the driveway that meet 20 to 22 feet in length
okay.
outside of the sidewalk.
And are you able to describe the units themselves in summary fashion?
I think Rob can a little bit better than me. Talking about the architecture?
How many bedrooms? How big are they? General information.
Thank you. My name is Rock DeGolian. My wife and I own this land, and we've been working diligently for the last 8 years to get it to where we are now. And I appreciate you all being here to give us consideration. To answer your question, first of all, the units will have separated garages. There'll be a small courtyard between the garage and the main living quarters. The units will be 2 stories, and roughly 2,500 square feet. Essentially, we're going to have, I think, 3 different floor plans is what we're discussing with our builder and designer. The living space, kitchen area, living space will be focused on either the rear courtyard that's behind the living space and between the garage, or we're also going to have some space in the front of the units, private, courtyard type areas out front. And but generally, it'll be bedrooms on the second level and living space on the first. Although I think one of the plans will have master on the main floor, on the first floor, with secondary bedrooms above.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Chris, any questions?
Sure. Did I hear correctly that the developer has agreed to widen the sidewalk to make it into a multi-use path? Is that correct? Great. And then I see that you said there's going to be 2 garage spaces, and in answer to Commissioner Leota's question, 2 spaces in front of the garage for each unit. I also see some parking spaces outlined sort of throughout the development. Is that, how many spaces are you hoping to have, without me counting them individually here, throughout the development, just on the side of this private road?
There's 39 shown right now.
Yeah, I think our intent was at least 1 per unit.
Okay.
Was that a zoning condition?
And there's 37 units, you said, so roughly 37 to 39 parking spaces. Okay. I have a question for staff. It looks like this development is within the Glenlock Village. Is that correct? I can show you this.
Yeah, believe it or not, I think that was how, when this area was annexed, that was the closest one without having to jump 54.
Can you give us some history? When was this annexed?
Oh, this whole area was annexed back, I want to say, was it December of 2019 or was it 2020? But let's see, did it include? Yes, so starting at this blue line all the way here, and then the whole existing Peachtree court, as well as, if I'm not mistaken, some of the lots across the street were all annexed in at one time in 2020 time frame. Is that wrong? It was 18? And then the rezoning happened in... Okay. So, my sense of time, the days are long, but the years are short. And so that's when that was all brought in. And then just to the north, Longboat and Genevieve came in about a year later.
Okay, thanks. And where would you say the village center is for the Glenlock Village?
Well, when we asked the comprehensive plan committee where they thought the nearest village center was, they put it over Lexington, where all that new shopping is located, but that was not a previously identified village center. In fact, the actual village centers, the last time they were identified was in the 72 plan. When they moved to the 85 plan, they stopped showing them on the map. They just kind of drew these amorphous bubbles. And so when we asked the question at the last comp plan, that's what the committee identified was.
How far is that from this property exactly?
So, there it is. Here we go. So this shopping center
Okay.
and this area. So this is sort of, it's a little oblong, but this was sort of the village center that the committee identified as being a village center. And they named it Lexington Village Center.
But they didn't give it a separate village.
They did not create a new village. They did not want to do that. No.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. Okay, that's all the questions I have for now. I'll reserve my comments for later.
Commissioner Hamner?
No questions.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and, any questions in particular, we're going to go ahead and start with comments. Commissioner Chris?
So, I've been fairly vocal with my stance on following the comprehensive plan and the step-down guidelines that the comprehensive plan provides. And, I think I mentioned when we approved the Townsend Village extensions, that I didn't agree with the density that was in Townsend Village at the very edge of our city property line. And so, you know, for that particular reason, it's very difficult for me to agree with the density here as well. You know, I definitely understand that this property may be difficult to develop. There's the mobile home park right just south of it. It's a small tract of land, so I don't want to be obstructive, but I just feel that if we are being truthful to our comprehensive plan and the guidelines that we've been provided by our council, I can't see myself supporting this kind of a plat with this kind of density, personally.
But keep in mind, it's already zoned for this.
Yeah.
And a
yeah,
conceptual plat, we're, as a platting authority, we're very limited. It has to meet the ordinance, and if it does, we have to approve it. If we don't want to approve it, it has to be based on something that it's lacking as far as the ordinance is required.
Does the zone, so, I guess I have another question for you then.
Mhm.
Does the current zoning allow for a different single-family use than what's proposed here?
Well, it was shown for, it was actually shown for kind of a multifamily use,
Mhm.
and it was up to 12 dwelling units per acre, so they could do anything up to 12 dwelling units, so they could do less.
They
In
could do
fact, they
more,
have
or they
done
could do less. Yeah. And so I think that's, even though you're absolutely right, that it allows a certain amount of density, I just feel that if we're being truthful, if we're being faithful, rather, to the comprehensive plan, then we should consider density and we should consider village centers as well. You know, I'm open for discussion on that point, but that's my stance. I also agree with Commissioner Leota's comments on what appears to be the general lack of preparation in the submitted documents. I agree that it would be nice to have more detailed drawings so that we can consider what the impact of this community will be in terms of the residents that will live there and how it'll be used. So, you know, if there is support for this, I'd love to see it tabled until we can get proper drawings. But personally, I don't support the density that's presented here today.
Commissioner Hamner?
Yeah, when this came up, Commissioner Chris, just to give you some more historical perspective on this, when this came up for rezoning in, what was it, 2019, 2020, we, as the Planning Commission, voted against rezoning 0 to 5 on this. And then when it went in front of City Council, it was 5-0 in favor of it. So, you know, fortunately, that was what City Council decided to do, without really following our recommendation at that time. So having said that, this is what it is. This is the zoning that's currently in place. It's meeting the requirements that are in place. They get to do what they want to do with it because it is zoned that way as long as it meets the requirements on this. Obviously, we can put some input in terms of like what we think about the plat and that type of stuff, but overall, it meets the requirements for this.
But we do have platting authority, don't we? We can either approve or deny the plat as
It still has to be based on the ordinance.
Right.
Mhm.
There's nothing in here, again, look at the zoning requirements on the right. It meets those. Obviously, we can say, offer our opinions on things like the sidewalk for a multi-use path. Obviously, we can do that type of stuff.
Do we not have authority to deny if it's in?
But it needs to be based on something. What would we base that on?
I base it on the comprehensive plan. My objection.
Well, we
That's-
can't deny it based on the land use. If it's meeting the zoning, then
Yeah.
we have to approve it.
Okay.
Yep,
So we have authority, but if it's within the guidelines, we have to approve it.
Yes, sir.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so again, you know, your opinion's
Yeah.
well-reasoned. Again, when we saw this originally, we agreed with a lot of it.
Yeah.
But that's the way that it is right now because it was a 5-0 vote for City Council to approve this.
Got it.
So, there you go.
Yeah, I appreciate that context.
Appreciate that. Commissioner Reeves?
Sure. So I tend to agree with Commissioner Chris as far as the density is concerned, but based on the fact that we are here for particular reasons and we have to look to the ordinances, it doesn't seem as though the proposal does not meet the ordinance. So with that, the ordinance is what it is, and there's no reason that I see for us to deny it.
Commissioner Leota?
Well, we talked about potentially some changes in the plan, and it's my opinion that we need to see that information before we make a decision. And I would suggest to the other commissioners that the additional information that I was suggesting should be on the plan be added first and resubmitted so we can get a more informed decision about what some of these dimensions are, where things are gonna fall on the property. And I understand the fact that it's conceptual. It may change a little bit here and there when the actual plat and the site plans are developed. But it's supposed to establish a base benchmark for where you're going with the plan. Things like, there's some walkways throughout the site. It looks like there may or may not be a gazebo or benches. I think we need some explanation on some of those items before we can really make a decision on this. That's my personal opinion.
And let me go ahead and send this out to staff as a question. So, and we've seen multiple conceptual site plans, some with more information and some without. Is there anything that we're able to do to?
There is, I'm looking, so the ordinance actually gives a checklist of what has to be on a conceptual site plan. And it does say approximate location of property lines and proposed easements.
Correct.
So that is not shown. Proximate topography. The rest of it's like multi-use, green belts. I'll just read it to you so that there's no proposed name of subdivision, name and address of the property owner, name and address of the subdivider, vicinity map showing its location, property lines of adjoining tracts, approximate location of property lines, existing and proposed easements, burial grounds, railroads, water courses, buffers, widths and names of platted streets or other public right-of-ways. So there is, I think, some justification for tabling it and requesting that information be added.
Although it's maybe not significantly necessary, but I think the checklist also includes some schematic building elevations.
Ooh, it says the approximate location and widths of proposed streets, approximate location of existing proposed lots, approximate location of parcels proposed to be set aside for recreation, the location of temporary stakes, the proposed location of multi-use paths, and the location of green belts and other areas to be landscaped. So that's the checklist that's in our ordinance for concept plat specifications. But if you would like to see that information, it sounds like he actually already sent it, and
Okay.
and so having it included would not be a problem.
Yeah, I'm just referring to the ordinance itself. It's section 505, item 1J.
501 is where I was. So you're down at
And
505.
at 505, concept site plan submittal requirements.
Oh, that's a site plan. Yeah, that's different than a
Is
plat.
that not what this is?
That's not what this is.
Yeah, we're at the conceptual.
We're at a
plat.
plat. I know, a plan and a
It said-
plat are actually
It says
different.
concept site plan.
Right, that's not
That's
what
not
this
what
is.
this is?
No, sir, that's what the
Okay.
next item is.
Okay.
I know, it's,
Little confusing.
it is very, I totally agree, plat versus plan, and they're actually different standards in our ordinance. You're
Okay, so
absolutely
they
right.
may have some conceptual elevations that we can look at.
Mhm.
I can provide that right now.
Well, I guess the question to the commissioners, before we go any further on that, and I agree, I think the more information, the more details we have, the better our opportunity is to understand that and render a decision one way or the other. Is that something that we want to go ahead and take a look at now? Do we want to go ahead and have that presented?
Can I ask,
Sure.
when that information, or if that information is shown, what kinds of impacts do you anticipate it would have on the design? I mean, I think he's already said, and I would agree, that if they really are trying to get 22 to 25 spaces, we might see a shrinking of those green spaces. I don't know to what extent. Are there other items that you think might be impacted that I'm missing?
Well, I guess, you know, the distance from the private road on the south side to the mobile home park zone, the location of the easternmost building and its proximity to the perimeter of this boundary, and how close it is to that next zoning lot just north of the stormwater management facility. And building's pretty close to that property line. I think those things are important to look at before we can really vote.
Okay.
And I even think some of the details on recreation areas and things like that we are always looking at is, you know, because this could be young families, there could be different people moving in. And that's one of the things, I mean, we see something that looks like a gazebo with some area around it, but are there any other areas for things like that? And I think that's important to see even at this stage. So I guess with that said, do we have a motion to go ahead and table this and bring it back at the next meeting, which would now be the second meeting in
April
April,
22nd.
correct?
Mr. Chairman, can
Yes,
I
Commissioner.
ask another question?
Yes, you may.
I think the question that's starting to grow in my head is traffic. So we're gonna put X amount of units in this subdivision, and we also have other subdivisions on the right of that, you know. What do we know about the totality of all of these houses, all of these cars, on their impact for that street right there? And then on their impact for Highway 54, and then the impact on whatever those little turn things that were recently put in there
Right.
within the last couple of years. What mechanism do we actually have to get information from the builder about how they're going to impact our streets?
So a great time to do that would be when they're proposing the change in land use. We actually, city was proactive, and again, I apologize, my timeline in my head is very foggy, but I do know that we have what's called an access management plan for 54 in the area that is east of 74 all the way up to actually Ebenezer Road, and that's on the city website. And it included growth here, it included the 140 acres in Smoke Rise that has yet to develop, and it included growth around City Hall, because at the time there was discussion about redeveloping this whole area into a city center, which then changed. So they did that traffic access management study based on that projected future growth, which did include this. And as a result of that, they came up with recommendations for improvements at the intersections of North Lake North Lake and Flat Creek, and the R cuts that have now been implemented east on 54. That's what those funny cuts are called, R cuts.
Our cuts. So I guess that's that. And there's no other requirement we can ask of the builder as to,
I mean,
it is what it
yeah,
is.
well, it's that the land use, when you're changing the land use, that's when you wanna understand the impacts on, in fact, that's one of the 6 criteria, is not burdening the existing infrastructure, and it even lists including transportation, schools, parks, et cetera. So that's when you do it.
let me ask this, at that particular time that study was done,
Mhm.
did it have a vision for townhomes in this area, with this number of folks there?
It included, and I'd have to look at the details, but it included a blanket dwelling unit per acre assuming certain. So it didn't have a specific plan, but they would have done something along the lines of because of the GR zoning district, 12 units per acre. Now, what they did specifically, I'd have to look at it because there was some more detail done further, for the city center. We actually did break it down into units and the type of units. But for the Smoke Rise property and this property, it was just sort of we assumed a number of units per acre.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hamner, did you?
I was going to say some more historical context around that. That's what we looked at as well when the rezoning was being requested. I want to say that ultimately the traffic was negligible because again it's primarily residential. It is a lot of residential especially when you take the additional houses into account on that. But it was something that we absolutely voiced our concerns and was one of the reasons why we voted 0 to 5 against that at that time. The commercials likely that is planned, unless the plans have changed, I don't think they have though. That's going to be closer to the highway. That's going to be the real traffic driver for a lot of this area because, again, think about how many people leave their house per day versus a commercial area.
Well, and I think another thing that plays into this, and you mentioned Smoke Rise, is the development that's going now into Smoke Rise Corners there.
Well, there's actually 140 acres that's zoned for residential, doesn't
Yeah.
even have to come in for rezoning, that could potentially be developed
Right.
still.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
Well, just a question for my fellow commissioners here. Do we feel like we need the additional detail that Commissioner Leota has expressed an interest in?
I think it would be good to see just to inform us on this. And I know that's troublesome for you guys, so apologies for that. But I think it just, if we have questions about it, and if it's something that we want to check out, I think it's probably something that we should consider.
Okay. So then I think I'll make a motion to move to table this proposal until sufficient detail is provided as specified.
To the April 22nd.
Yeah, to the April 22nd meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion to table the Peachtree Court Townhomes until the April 22nd meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to table and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay,
Okay.
will be tabled until the April 22nd meeting at this
Will
point.
that be enough time to, I'm sure that'll be enough time to get that put down together. Well, it's the only item on the agenda. It would be up to this board to see if you want to hold that meeting for one item. It's totally up to you.
I can state why. I mean, we have all this information. We just didn't realize it's been here. The plan's been here for a month. So we didn't
I'm
realize
inclined to do it,
concept
but
stage.
it's up to you.
Well, I mean, would we want to go ahead and open the meeting back up for April, well, I guess April, what did we say?
Here, hold on.
Is it the
would
8th?
be-
Yeah, I'm open to that.
I'm
yes, the
inclined to
8th.
do it.
Okay,
I'm open to that. Yeah.
Commissioner Reeves?
That would be fine for me, but I'm out of town that week, so just that you know that,
Okay.
that's fine for me.
I'm here.
Okay.
But I'm not voting, so.
Well, would like your input into it, if,
Yep.
but it seems like we have
Oh, you
enough in favor of
Yeah.
going ahead and doing that,
So should we remake the motion since the motion was for a specific date? Is there another motion?
Can I withdraw the motion?
Well, it's already been voted on, so I think you can make another motion.
Okay, yeah.
You can do it.
Just,
Yeah.
just do a different motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, do a different motion.
Yep.
Okay. Move to table to the April 8th meeting.
Okay, do we have a second for that? Okay, we have a motion to table to the April 8th new meeting, and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so it will now be on the docket for April 8th.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on now to the conceptual site plan
That's
for
right.
the Primrose School, 110 Wilshire Village Drive.
On the other side of town, we are now located on the south side. We were up here, and now we're on the other side, down here. And we're in the Wilshire Village Shopping Center. and it's one of the last remaining lots to be developed. And you may remember that we recently approved the lot just next to it for a conceptual site plan. It is zoned GC, but it is zoned GC with conditions. And those conditions that pertain to our process tonight are that a daycare is permitted, but it had to be a lot that was larger than 40,000 square feet, which is a little bit under an acre. This lot is 1.9 acres, I believe, so it does meet that requirement. Check that. Yep, 1.9. They were required to provide inter-parcel access, which they are showing here. And they had to comply with the state daycare standards, which took a little digging on my behalf, but was able to find and listed that section so that you're able to do research if you were so inclined. But the condition that really pertains to this process, basically the space design, is the amount of outdoor space that's required per child, or actually per 1/3 of a child. And so the state requirements had a minimum of 6,400 square feet, and they're providing in excess of 13,000 square feet. So they do meet that zoning condition requirement. When we look at the development ordinance, we did want to mention this location is within a distance of a major thoroughfare, and therefore the the elevations do have to come back before you for review. They will do that at a later date. As you see, the way that this is designed, how it's pushed back towards the lot, it backs up the property to the west and to the south, actually belongs to the Summerby development. The nearest planned path is located on Rockaway Road. It's constructed, so there are no planned paths in this immediate area. We also make sure they meet our minimum required parking, which would have been 46 spaces, and they're providing 50, so they meet that. And then they also had a 25-foot landscape buffer required along adjoining property lines to the Summerby property. I did want to bring to your attention, they mislabeled this as undisturbed. That is not the case. It's not required by the ordinance or by the zoning. So they don't have, it can be disturbed. In fact, the zoning said that they have to do a combination of berms and landscaping, so they have to disturb it to create those berms. So it is not a undisturbed buffer, but you can see that they have preserved most of it. They do have a driveway that comes through it, which we do permit, but they'll come back at a later date as well with their landscape plan for your review. And so staff is of the opinion that the conceptual site plan meets the requirements of the ordinance and are recommending approval. And the applicant is here to answer, basically to describe why they've designed the property this way and how they plan to use it.
Good evening, Jason Walls with Highland Land Planning again. Just want to reiterate everything she said is accurate as we've drawn it. Want to sit down and answer your questions or comments. We do have the franchise owner and a representative from Primrose Schools here today if you have any questions specific to those.
Okay, thank you. Okay, gonna go ahead and open it up for any questions. I'm gonna start with Commissioner Hamner.
No questions.
Commissioner Chris?
Just out of curiosity, have you spoken with the abutting landowners, to discuss what you plan to put here?
Meaning the dermatology or
Well, really Summerby.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
I don't think so. I will say this though, there is a road that and a driveway basically that's connecting.
Yeah.
I don't think they can develop between the road and our property line. So there's, in addition to the 25 feet, it's probably
It's a good amount of space.
on the bottom side another 30 to 40 feet. On the left side at like 100 feet.
Yeah.
Left side's fully wooded. The southern side, I think they wrapped up into us a little bit, graded onto our property, put some landscaping, stuff like that. But we plan on maintaining that and adding back to the landscaping like Robin said.
Okay. Fair enough. No further questions.
Okay. Commissioner Leota?
Yes, Mr. Walls, it's Walls, correct? I apologize for that before.
That's okay.
I just have a series of questions about the operations of the facility, just so that we understand how this works. And I'll just ask the questions, and if you can respond, or we can have the operator respond.
Mr. Wallace with Primrose Schools is here, so he
Okay.
can stand up and answer some.
The first question I had was, could you please describe the parent or guardian drop-off and pickup and how that works?
Yes. The times of the pickup or the drop-off is sometime around 6:30 to 9 in the morning. The parents will pull in. It takes about 5 minutes for the parents to get out, take their child inside the school, and then they get them to the classroom. The parents will come out and then leave again. So there's, they don't do like a drive-through lane or anything like that. And in the evening, it's the same thing. They come somewhere between 4:30 and I think it's closed after 5:30, and they do the same procedure. So it's
Okay.
pretty smooth, seamless, and we've done all different studies on it. That's why we have ample parking for them.
That's
And
what I
our
was just gonna
teachers
ask
too.
that.
We typically have about 25 teachers and staff in the school. So the parking ratio, we've done surveys, it works well. There's plenty of parking for that transition of parent and drop off and pick up.
Okay, all right, and you answered the teacher question. I had, how many teachers do you expect for the 214 kids?
Yep, it's a certain amount of teachers per classroom per child, so.
Okay. By the way, I appreciate the additional dimensioning that's added to this plan. It helped the review significantly. There's a series of fence lines shown on the plan. There's some across the front of the building and around the playground areas.
Mhm.
Could you describe how the kids get to the various playgrounds, and are they using the space in the front that's fenced in?
Yes, all the classrooms, we have infants all the way up to 4.5-year-olds. So each classroom has an interior door and an exterior door, so the children can get out, and I believe by code about 45 minutes a day they have a chance to get exercise. So each classroom has an outside door where the teachers take the child out. The fencing is to keep them enclosed in the whole area, so they can't just wander around. The fences are 5 feet tall, so the children can't be taken out of the inside area. We have it tall enough for that. So they roll around the whole building. The playgrounds are divided with fencing also because of the age groups. But that's the reason for the fence across the front. And we also take into account we've seen this happen in the past, we have a special fence. It's a Maristar fencing that's powder-coated aluminum with rails. It's not, in the back part would probably be chain link, which is a black powder-coated fence. But we have a crash-resistant fence just in case there was an accident. We've had that happen where the fencing will take a pretty good shot from a car. So the fencing we have on there wraps around the entire building, or maybe not the front entrance where the front doors are, but the rest of it's enclosed. That's why we have the fencing like that.
Okay, thank you. A couple more questions,
Mhm.
primarily about the playground areas. And if you know at this time, what kind of surfacing do you use for underneath the playgrounds?
We use a product, it's built out, it's made in Dalton, Georgia. We call it X-Grass. It's a fall-resistant AstroTurf, basically, where they excavate, the GC excavates down about 6 to 8 inches. And in that area, they bring in a fill, and then on top of the fill, they put a foam, and then on top of that, they put the X-Grass, as we call it, or AstroTurf. It's got a 20-year warranty, and we do have around certain pieces of equipment a fall area for if a child will stay on a swing. There's a deeper area for a fall guard, but the whole area is AstroTurf.
Okay, terrific. So all of that surfacing meets the fall hazard safety issues?
Correct. It's all the way up to the fence, every bit of it.
Okay. And the last question about the playground area, does any of this, or will the playground structures have shade structures or shade canopies for them?
Yes, sir. We have an element called the fire truck. It has it's probably almost as big as this area here that's shaded. And there's actually the 3 areas. The infants also have a shaded area where they have a thing that they work with, but there are 3 big shaded areas for the different age groups: toddlers, infants, and the older children. and it's like a mesh, it's waterproof, it's very durable stuff. We use Play Power equipment it's got a 20-year warranty on it, very well made.
That's terrific, thank you. Those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Reeves?
Yes, thanks. The one question I had pertained to, you have the preschool, after-school playground area. The after-school playground area, is that for children in the elementary schools that's coming there, or what is that? What exactly is the after-school playground? Who's that for?
It's more for, I mean, it's a range from probably from 2-year-olds to 4.5 or 5-year-old
Okay.
children. And the parents can bring the children in there and they more or less, it's a daycare more than a school system. So that area is defined for after school for that range group, that average range group.
Okay, and just so I'm completely clear, the age group, again, for the people that's using this facility, is not gonna be past 5 years old?
I'm sorry?
Are the kids gonna be past 5 or 6 years old?
No,
that use-
that goes into kindergarten. We only go from infants up to 4.5.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Going in to open it up for comments. Commissioner Chris?
Just happy to see this kind of a development. I know this is a need in our community, so fully supportive. No further comments.
Commissioner Hamner?
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who has one of these up in the Nashville area, and she's really loved running it. I know it's also really helped the community. You guys, welcome to Peachtree City. Really glad to have you guys here.
Commissioner Reeves?
Yeah, the same. I'm very happy to see a childcare facility coming into the area.
Commissioner
A
Lota?
little history on the school.
sorry.
It was founded here in Atlanta over 40 years ago by Mary and Paul Irwin, and their dream was to bring education to young children, and we expand on that every year. We've got 500 schools in 36 states, and we have one of the best curriculums in the system, we feel.
Excellent.
I like the plan, I think it's in a great spot for something like this, and they addressed all the questions I had, and I think it'll be a very nice operation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
And I'm just going to ask or bring up one thing, and I know it's usually someone else that brings up, but golf carts and parking spots.
Oh, for parking spots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I know they're under, or they're over. I'm sorry, they're
They're
over. They're
Little bit
required.
over.
And I'm just thinking because of Holly Grove across the street and the neighborhood, if there's anyone that's going to be bringing their child over, I know we can park in a parking spot with a golf cart, but since we're a little bit over on the number provided, are we able to go ahead and add a few spots?
I don't see a problem with that as far as what was required or what the neighborhood need. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Jason, do you think you can?
I think we could, the spaces facing the building, I think we can take some of those and give us a little distance away from that fence you're asking about. We can have some green space or something like that.
Okay.
We'll take,
Yeah.
I don't know what the percentage needs to be, 'cause I don't think that's an ordinance, but if you want 10%, 5%, just let me know, we'll try to work.
Yeah, we don't have anything in particular which, is something that we've discussed time and time again, but I think it'd probably be good, especially for young parents, if they're bringing their kids or grandparents. Like I said, just in the general area across the street, or across, 74, to be able to have a couple spots there, so.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, 'cause I know we go back and forth on this,
Yep.
but, because I keep thinking on a rainy day, and
Yeah.
nobody's driving, at least I don't think you'd bring your infant to school on a rainy day, they just park in a regular parking space, so
They can.
it's more expensive for us, we're gonna,
Yep.
but on a rainy day, those golf cart spaces, a car can't park in those spaces.
Mhm.
On a dry day,
Correct.
a golf cart can park in a car space. So there's that. I don't know how you feel about that, but we don't mind putting 10%, which would be 5 spaces or so, I think, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Maybe in the lower left-hand corner of the parking lot, there's an open space there that
Yeah.
could just be a paved area for,
Couple spaces.
Am I pointing in the right area?
Yeah.
just to the left of that right in there.
Okay.
Maybe that would work for half a dozen cart spaces.
That's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Kinda like they
Yeah, I
do
was
at
just
the
looking
schools.
because they were over what the minimum requirement was.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
being able to
Put
convert
a
a couple
curb
over, but
cut
if,
in the curb and they pull right in.
yeah, but if we have another opportunity to put a couple cart spaces without taking regular parking, that's great. Yep.
Yeah, I really like that suggestion, Ray, because, you know, with, you know, little children, you wanna cross as few streets as possible, right? So if it's on the side of the building, you know, even if there's spots available for cars, you know, folks with golf carts might utilize them because it's like, oh, I can just take my kid right along the path, right to the cart. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. Yeah.
That'd be good.
Somebody mentioned this, someone asked one last question. We're already over parks, so we're already penalized and gotta do extra landscaping. These extra 6 or so spaces do not go towards that count, do they?
Especially if you
Penalize
were
that for
to put them in impervious or pervious pavers,
So build them with impervious material,
that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be good.
we'll do that.
Cool.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Well, thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
with that being said, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the conceptual site plan for Primrose School at 110 Wilshire Village Drive.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion to approve and second. Any other discussion or comments? No? Okay, all those in favor of approving 110 Wilshire Village Drive signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Okay, approved 110 Wilshire Village Drive. Okay, great. Okay, so again, our next meeting will be
The 8th?
April 8th, and I believe that is our solar eclipse day, is it not?
No, really?
It is.
We'll all come in, can we all come in wearing
With our
running
glasses?
glasses?
Yes, most definitely. Okay, if there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second. Motion adjourned and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Meeting adjourned.